Every dawn for the past 6 years, I've woken to an empty bed. Clara always rose before me, and by the time my eyes opened, the aroma of fresh coffee wafted from the kitchen. Now, I brew my own. I take my time, savoring the ritual. 2 tablespoons of ground coffee, a cup of water, a dash of salt, just as Clara did. Yet, it never tastes like hers. My name is Walter Grayson. I'm 75, living alone in a modest 1-story home in Boise, Idaho. After 40 years as a bookkeeper, I retired. A year later, Clara passed from a sudden heart attack. The doctor claimed she didn't suffer. I'm still unsure if that was truth or a kind lie. Our only daughter, Evelyn, skipped the funeral. She had a critical work meeting in Seattle, one she couldn't reschedule. She arrived 4 days later, after neighbors and I laid Clara to rest. Evelyn apologized, gave a stiff hug, and asked if I'd sell the house. "It's too big for one person," she said, standing in the living room. "You're not young anymore. Maybe a retirement home." Clara called Evelyn practical. I chose a harsher word, scheming. I said it aloud that day. "Your mother's barely gone, and you're already eyeing the house's value?" Evelyn looked shocked, as if I'd said something crude. She didn't stay, citing a hotel booking. We didn't see her for nearly a year. Evelyn works as an insurance broker for a large firm. Her husband, Leonard, designs highways as a civil engineer. They moved to Boise a decade ago when his firm landed a local project. Before that, they were in Portland, and Clara and I only saw our grandchildren during holidays. When they settled here, we were thrilled, Clara said. "Now we'll be a real family." For a few months, we helped them settle, watched their twins, Sophie and Ethan, then 8 years old. Now they're 18, studying on the East Coast. I haven't seen them in 4 years. Ties with Evelyn and Leonard frayed before Clara's death. They stopped inviting us, rarely brought the kids. Excuses piled up: work, school, errands. Clara hid her worry, saying they're busy with their lives, but I saw her wipe tears while gazing at the twins' photos. After Clara's passing, I became their cash machine. Evelyn only called when she needed money for tuition, home repairs, or Leonard's new car. I never refused. She's my daughter. Clara and I saved well. I could live to 100 and not run dry. But each check I wrote left me feeling used. 7 months ago, I gave them $60,000 for a house down payment. Evelyn promised I'd be a co-owner. "It'll ease the bank's approval," she said. "And you can visit anytime it's your home, too." I signed the papers without reading closely. Leonard watched me warily, as if I might back out. I didn't. Since then, I've never stepped inside their home. My calls went to voicemail, my messages ignored. When Evelyn answered, her words were clipped. "Sorry, Dad, I'm busy. I'll call back." She never did. This morning began as usual. I brewed coffee, made toast with jam, and sat with the newspaper. The house was silent, save for the ticking of the old clock, a wedding gift from Clara's parents. As I started the crossword, the phone rang. "Dad, it's Evelyn." My heart tightened. She hadn't called unprompted in years. It could only mean one thing: she needed something. "Good morning, Evelyn," I said. "It's nice to hear you. Leonard and I are heading to the coast next month for 2 weeks, she said. "Thought you might join us." I nearly dropped my mug. It was the first invitation in 6 years. "The coast?" I asked, stunned. "Yes, near Cannon Beach, Oregon." She replied, "We've booked a cottage, 3 bedrooms, ocean view. Leonard says the fishing's great." I wasn't a fisherman, Evelyn knew that. Clara loved fishing, spending hours by the lake while I read nearby. After her death, I sold her gear. "Sounds wonderful," I said, wary of the catch. "Why now? We just thought you needed a change," she said, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "You barely leave the house. It's not healthy." She was right. My world had shrunk to my home and the local grocery store. I rarely even fed the ducks at the park anymore. My knees ached too much. "When are you going?" I asked. 3 weeks from today. The 12th, she said. "We'll pick you up. Bring your ID, credit card, and clothes. The cottage has everything else. Her precision made me uneasy, but I pushed it aside. Maybe they wanted to mend things. Okay, I said after a pause. I'll come? Great, Evelyn said, her voice brightening. Be ready at 7 a.m. She hung up without waiting for my reply. 3 weeks passed quickly. I packed as Evelyn instructed ID, credit card, clothes, and medications. I added $800 in cash, tucked in my shirt pocket. On departure day, I woke at 5 a.m., too excited to sleep. I made coffee, ate, and waited by the living room window. The clock ticked past 7, then 7:30, then 8. By 8:45, worry set in. Had they crashed, forgotten me? Just as I reached for the phone, a sleek gray SUV pulled up. Evelyn stepped out, polished in a cream blazer. Leonard stayed behind the wheel, engine running. Sorry we're late. Dad, she said, entering without knocking. Traffic was bad. Ready, I nodded at my small suitcase. I've been ready. She glanced at my worn slacks. You're not wearing those, are you? They're ancient. Don't you have something nicer? These are my best, I said, irritation rising. If they bother you, I'll stay. Fine, whatever. She waved dismissively. Leonard's waiting. Hurry. She grabbed my suitcase, and I locked the house, checking the appliances. In the car, Leonard barely grunted a greeting, eyes fixed ahead. Good morning. Leonard, I said, settling in the back. Uh-huh, he mumbled. Everyone in, let's go. Evelyn nodded. And we pulled out. It's a 10-hour drive, she said without turning. We'll stop overnight somewhere. Got your meds? I'm not a child, I replied. Of course I did. She said nothing. As my house faded in the rear view, a strange feeling hit me like I'd never see it again. I pushed it away. 2 weeks with family. A chance to reconnect. I settled in, hopeful, but uneasy. The drive was quiet. I watched Idaho's fields roll by. Evelyn and Leonard murmured up front. Too soft to hear. Sometimes they laughed, a sound I hadn't heard from Evelyn in years. I closed my eyes, lulled by the engine, daring to hope this trip could fix things. 2 hours in. I tried conversation. How are Sophie and Ethan? I asked. Fine, Evelyn said, eyes on her phone, studying. Sophie's got a new boyfriend, some artist. Ethan's still set on medicine, I think. She shrugged. He's struggling with biology. Leonard chuckled. If he partied less, it'd be easier. I bit back a comment. Kids their age balance fun and work. Instead, I asked, want to stop for lunch I can treat? Evelyn turned. Dad, it's only been 2 hours. Hungry already? No. Just thought Leonard cut in. We'll stop in 2 hours in Spokane. Got a place in mind. Sorry, I mumbled, feeling scolded. Evelyn returned to her phone, and I stared out the window. Suddenly, the car slowed. Leonard pulled over. What's wrong? Evelyn asked. Need to stretch, he said, glancing at her. Check the map. They stepped out, leaving me inside. I watched them argue heatedly a few yards away. Glancing at the car, I looked away, pretending not to notice. 5 minutes later, they returned. Leonard slammed the door. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, Evelyn snapped. We drove to Spokane in tense silence. We stopped at a fancy Spokane restaurant, the Golden Fork, with upscale decor. Evelyn insisted I leave my old jacket in the car. They've got a dress code. Dad, she said. Like I was clueless. I complied, shivering in the air-conditioned dining room. The waiter handed us menus, but the print was tiny, and my glasses were in the jacket. Still deciding? Evelyn asked. I squinted at a chicken dish. Maybe something simpler, Leonard suggested. Soup or salad? I want chicken, I said stubbornly. Evelyn rolled her eyes. Dad, Your stomach can't handle rich food. Remember when you got sick last time? What, I haven't had issues in years. I said, just get the salad, she snapped, shutting her menu. Leonard? You ready? They ordered me a salad, ignoring my request for wine, choosing water instead. When the food came, Evelyn asked the waiter to cut my salad into smaller pieces for Daddy's ease. I can manage, I said, face flushing. Sure. Dad, she said, patting my hand like I was a child. Leonard smirked. Remember that time at Olive Garden, when your dad spilled soup and we had to buy him a new shirt? Evelyn laughed. So embarrassing. I stared, stunned. That never happened. It didn't, I said firmly. Dad, you forgot, Evelyn said, her tone patronizing. It's normal at your age. I wanted to argue, but it was pointless. I ate my salad, swallowing my anger. After lunch, Evelyn drove, and Leonard worked on his laptop beside me, ignoring me. By evening, we reached a small town in Washington for the night. Evelyn booked 2 motel rooms, one for them, one for me. Rest up, Dad, she said, handing me a key. We're grabbing dinner across the street. I can join, I offered. No, Leonard said. Long day tomorrow. They left me in a drab room with worn carpet and a musty bedspread. I sat on the bed, wondering why I came. Morning came, and Evelyn banged on my door at 6:30. Hurry. Dad, we leave in 20 minutes. I dressed quickly. Leonard was already in the driver's seat. Impatient. Good morning. I said, uh-huh, he grunted. Evelyn handed me a bag. Got you breakfast, a muffin and coffee. Thanks, I said, touched. The coffee was cold. The muffin dry. The day dragged on the highway. Stops were brief, only for gas or restrooms. My requests to pause were met with sighs. By night, we reached Cannon Beach. The cottage was grand, 2 stories, ocean view, 3 bedrooms. Your room's upstairs, last on the left, Evelyn said, handing me a key. Dinner's at 7. I struggled up the stairs with my suitcase. No one helped. My room was small, with a view of a neighbor's shed, not the ocean. I unpacked, showered, and joined them for dinner on the patio. They sipped wine, plates of chicken and greens before them. Nice room, Evelyn asked. Fine. I lied. We thought upstairs would be quieter. Leonard said, I didn't mention that stairs were hard on my knees. Tomorrow, we're hitting a brewery tour. Evelyn said, you'll probably want to rest. Right, I'd like to go. I said. They exchanged looks. It's a long tour. Dad, Evelyn said, lots of walking. And tasting doesn't mix with your meds. I can skip the tasting. I insisted. Sorry. Leonard said, tickets are booked. Limited group. I nodded, anger rising. I ate in silence. The first 3 days followed the same pattern. Evelyn and Leonard left each morning brewery, kayaking, hiking, returning late. I stayed behind, walking the beach, reading old magazines, wondering why they brought me. On the 4th day, they announced a group dinner at a fancy oceanfront restaurant. Wear something nice. Dad, Evelyn said, I wore my only suit, the one from Clara's funeral, now loose from weight loss. Evelyn frowned. That suit looks like a funeral, Dad. It is, I said dryly. Leonard laughed. At least it's dark. Hides the age. At the restaurant, I felt out of place among well-dressed diners. Evelyn ordered me a weak cocktail, ignoring my dislike for gin. The menu had no prices except on Leonard's. I asked for a steak. Medium rare. No, Dad, Evelyn said. Your doctor banned red meat. What doctor? I snapped. I haven't seen one in months. Don't make a scene, she whispered, ordering me grilled fish. I clenched my fists under the table. Leonard snapped a photo for the twins. Smile. Dad, Evelyn said. I managed a grimace. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection, wondering when I became so old, when Evelyn started seeing me as a burden. Back at the table, Evelyn and Leonard chatted with a nearby couple. Diane and Robert. This is my dad. Walter. Evelyn said, we brought him from Boise so he wouldn't be alone. How sweet, Diane said. My dad won't travel. Says old trees don't replant. You're lucky he's so agreeable, Robert added. Oh, he has his moments, Evelyn said, glancing at me. I feel more like his mom than his daughter checking his meds. His diet. Yesterday, he tried sneaking bourbon with his blood pressure issues. That's a lie, I said loudly. I haven't touched bourbon in years. And last week, Evelyn continued, he nearly burned the kitchen down. Forgot the stove. I haven't been to your house in months, I said, trembling. Dad, you were there last Thursday, she said calmly. You forgot. It's normal. I stood abruptly. I need air. Outside, the ocean breeze calmed me. Why was Evelyn lying? Then it hit me they wanted me declared incompetent to seize my assets. Evelyn found me on the boardwalk. You okay, Dad? Why are you lying about my health? I asked. I'm not, she said, touching my shoulder. You forget things. It's normal for your age. I wasn't at your house last week. I said, stop it. Dad, she said, don't embarrass us tomorrow at Diane and Robert's dinner. I'm not going, I said, I'm going home. She laughed. A cab to Boise, come back, Leonard's paid. We drove back in silence, their whispers up front chilling me. It's too early, I heard. He's suspicious. At the cottage, I locked myself in my room, lying awake, certain they were plotting against me. I woke late to a slammed door. A note from Evelyn read, Dad? Leonard and I are on a day trip. Back late. Sandwiches in the fridge. Don't miss us. I wasn't hungry. I walked to the beach, sat on a bench, and thought. The note felt too casual after last night's tension. Back at the cottage, I found my wallet on the sand. My credit card was gone. I checked my suitcase. My passport was misplaced under shirts. They'd taken it while I slept. Panic hit. They'd abandoned me here, far from home, without ID or funds. I considered the police but doubted they'd believe me. Evelyn likely had a story ready about my mental decline. I found a tourist brochure with a Cannon Beach map. The town center was 2 miles away. I packed essentials cash, clothes, driver's license, and walked to the tourist office. A kind woman helped. Boise's far, she said. Take a bus to Portland, fly to Spokane, then Boise. The bus was $40, leaving in 2 hours. My license sufficed for the ticket. I waited in a cafe, realizing Evelyn and Leonard wanted my savings. Maybe to declare me incompetent. Their plan was sloppy. They missed my cash and license. I boarded the bus to Portland, watching the coast fade. At the airport, flights to Spokane were $900, leaving me nearly broke. An airport worker suggested a bus to Boise via Seattle and Spokane for $250. I bought the ticket, relieved to have a plan. The 3-day bus ride was grueling. I barely slept, haunted by Evelyn's transformation from my sweet girl to a cold schemer. When had it changed? In college, when she met Leonard, Clara distrusted him, calling him insincere. I'd dismissed it, but she was right. Leonard's charm was calculated, his disdain barely hidden. After the twins, Evelyn grew distant, her calls rare, her visits formal. The money requests started small, then grew. I gave $60,000 for their house, believing I'd be part of it. Now, I wondered what I'd signed. Was I a co-owner or just a debtor? In Boise, I took a cab home, exhausted but clear-headed. The answering machine held 20 messages from Evelyn, her tone shifting from concern to panic. Dad, where are you? We're worried. I ignored them, showered, and went to the bank. The manager, Susan, was shocked. Evelyn said you lost your card on vacation. No, I said. She took it and left me in Oregon. Susan checked my account. A $6,000 withdrawal in Portland and a failed $25,000 transfer to Evelyn's account. I blocked the card and revoked Evelyn's access. Next, I visited my lawyer, Paul Reed, about the house. You're a 1/3 owner, he said, with equal rights. You can sell your share or force a sale. They'd need to agree, or it goes to court. I decided to sell my share. Paul recommended a realtor, Laura Holt. I also asked about Leonard's truck in my garage, which I co-owned. If it's been there over 6 months, you can claim it as abandoned, Paul said. I filed the claim, noting my unanswered calls to them. At the bank, I closed our joint account, holding $30,000, all my deposits. Susan warned Evelyn could contest it, but I was ready. I moved to a new apartment across Boise, a quiet spot by a river, renting for $1,000 monthly from a kind landlord. Henry, I took only essentials clothes, Clara's photos, a few books leaving the past behind. I changed my phone, email, and updated all records, erasing my old traces. The DMV approved my claim on Leonard's truck. I sold it for $45,000. Laura found a buyer for the house at $750,000. My share, $250,000. Evelyn and Leonard didn't respond to the sale notice. Laura filed for a forced sale. They later claimed I had dementia, but 3 specialists confirmed my mental clarity. The court ruled for the sale. Evelyn and Leonard were furious, threatening appeals, but their lawyer urged compliance. The house sold. My share deposited. On the street. Evelyn confronted me, distraught. You stole our home. Our truck. Our money. I stayed calm. It was my house, too. I said, you abandoned me. Took my card. Tried to rob me. She claimed they searched for me, saying the $6,000 was for my safety. I called out her lies. You wanted me declared incompetent. She faltered. Leonard sneered, calling me difficult. I said I just wanted to be family, not a bank. Evelyn pleaded to start over. I refused. You betrayed me years ago, I said, I'm done. She accused me of ruining her, even lying that Clara regretted our marriage. I knew it was a desperate jab. Clara loved me. I said, goodbye. I walked away, free. Months later, my life was calm. I made friends with neighbors, played cards, kept my past private. A postcard arrived from Sophie. No return address. Saying, thank you for the truth. I wondered how she knew my address. What she meant. I kept it with Clara's photos, unsure if I'd ever know. Sitting by the river, I felt peace. I'd lost a family that never truly existed but gained freedom, self-respect, and a quiet life. That was enough. Of course, I am sorry. I leaned back in my seat. Feeling like a delinquent child, Beatrice went back to her phone, and I went back to looking at the scenery outside the window. Suddenly, the car slowed, and Theodore pulled over. What happened? Beatrice asked worriedly. I need to stretch, and he looked meaningfully at his wife. Check the map. They got out of the car, leaving me inside. I saw them walk a few meters away and begin to argue animatedly. Theodore was gesticulating irritably. Beatrice was arguing passionately. I could not hear the words, but it was clear from their faces that the conversation was not pleasant. They glanced back at the car several times, and I looked away hastily, pretending not to notice them. About 5 minutes later, they returned. Theodore got behind the wheel, slamming the door shut with force. Is everything all right? I asked cautiously. Fine, Beatrice said. We drove the rest of the way to Salt Lake City in tense silence. We stopped at the Silver Spoon restaurant, a fancy place with a pretension to haute cuisine. Beatrice insisted I leave my tattered jacket in the car. They have a dress code. Daddy, she said as if she were explaining the obvious to a child. I obeyed, though I felt uncomfortable without my jacket. The restaurant's air conditioning was on full blast. We were escorted to the table by the window. A young waiter in a snow-white shirt handed us leather-covered menus. I could hardly make out the names of the dishes. The font was small, and I had left my glasses in my jacket. Have you made up your mind? Beatrice asked after a minute. Not yet. I squinted, trying to read the description of some salmon dish. Maybe you should choose something simpler, Theodore suggested. Soup of the day or pasta? I would like fish, I said stubbornly. Beatrice rolled her eyes. Dad, you know you have stomach problems. Remember the last time you got sick after eating seafood last time? What is she talking about? I have not had seafood with them in years. And I do not have any stomach problems. Beatrice, you are confused. You better order the pasta. She slammed the menu down. Theodore, have you chosen? And so began a series of petty humiliations. They ordered me pasta when I wanted fish. They chose water instead of the wine I asked for. When the waiter brought the food, Beatrice asked me to cut my pasta into small pieces to make it more convenient for Daddy. I am perfectly capable of handling my own food, I said, feeling the color flood my face. Sure you are, Daddy. She patted my hand with that condescending smile usually reserved for cranky children or old people out of their minds. Theodore grinned openly. I would not want a repeat of that incident at the Olive Garden. Remember, darling, when your father dropped spaghetti on his shirt and we had to buy him a new one. Oh, yes. Beatrice laughed. It was so embarrassing. I looked at them in bewilderment. There was no incident at the Olive Garden. I had not been to the restaurant with them in years. They were making up these stories to make me look like a feeble old man. It never happened, I said firmly. Dad, come on! Beatrice continued to smile, but there was a twinkle of irritation in her eyes. You just forgot. It is normal at your age. I wanted to object, but I realized it was useless. Instead, I silently began to eat my pasta, chewing not so much the food as the resentment. After lunch, we continued on our way. This time, Beatrice took the wheel, and Theodore sat next to me in the back seat. He opened his laptop and immersed himself in his work, completely ignoring my presence. By late afternoon, we reached a small town in Utah where we planned to spend the night. Beatrice had booked 2 rooms at a roadside motel, one for herself and Theodore, the other for me. Make yourself comfortable, Dad, she said, handing me the key. Theodore and I are going to have dinner at the bar across the street. I could join you, I suggested. You better get some rest. Theodore cut him off. It is a long day tomorrow. They left, leaving me alone in a featureless room with worn carpet and a bedspread that smelled of cheap detergent. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling fatigue and frustration pile up on my shoulders. What am I doing here? Why did I agree to this trip? In the morning, they knocked on my door at 7. Hurry up, Dad Beatrice shouted. We have to leave in 30 minutes. I washed and dressed and went out to the car. Theodore was already behind the wheel, tapping his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. Good morning, I said, climbing into the back seat. Uh-huh. He mumbled back. Everybody ready to go? Let us go. Beatrice handed me a paper bag. We got you breakfast, cinnamon bun, and coffee. Thank you. I was touched by the gesture. Maybe it was not so bad. I took a sip of the coffee and grimaced. It was cold and tasteless. The bun was stale. The day passed in monotonous traffic on the highway. We only stopped for gas in the restroom, and every time I asked for a stop. Theodore sighed irritably, and Beatrice said we were already behind schedule. By the evening of the second day, we reached Monterey. The cottage they had rented turned out to be a spacious 2-story house overlooking the ocean. 3 bedrooms, living room with fireplace, fully equipped kitchen. Everything looked expensive and elegant. Your room is upstairs, last door on the right, Beatrice said, handing me the key. Make yourself comfortable. Dinner is at 8. I walked up the stairs, dragging my suitcase with difficulty. No one offered to help. Though Theodore easily carried 4 huge suitcases, my room was the smallest in the house with a narrow bed and a view of the neighbor's garage instead of the ocean. I unpacked, showered, and went downstairs for dinner. Beatrice and Theodore were sitting on the patio sipping wine. There were 3 plates of pasta and salad on the table. "Ah, Papa," Beatrice raised her glass. "How do you like the room?" "It is nice." I lied. "Thank you." "We thought you would be more comfortable on the 2nd floor," Theodore said, quiet. I did not bother reminding him that at my age, climbing stairs several times a day was not the most pleasant thing to do. Instead, I sat down at the table in silence and began to eat. "Theodore and I are going to the winery tomorrow," Beatrice announced. "A tasting tour. You will probably want to stay here and rest. Will not you?" It was not a question. "Actually, I would love to see the winery," I said. Beatrice and Theodore exchanged glances. "It is a long tour, Dad," Beatrice said softly. "A lot of walking and the tasting. It does not go well with your medication." "I can skip the tasting," I insisted, "and I am perfectly capable of walking." "Listen, Owen." Theodore put down his fork. "The tickets have already been purchased. The group is limited. We cannot add you at the last minute." "I understand." I lowered my eyes to my plate, feeling a wave of anger and resentment rising inside. "Do not feel bad. Dad," Beatrice patted my arm. "We will bring you a nice bottle of wine. I did not say anything." Dinner ended in awkward silence. This is how the first 3 days of our family vacation went. Beatrice and Theodore would leave in the morning, then to the winery, then to yachting, then to golf, and return late in the evening. I stayed alone in this cottage, wandering the beach, reading old magazines found in the living room, and wondering why they had invited me at all. On the 4th day, they announced that we were going to a restaurant that evening. All of us. "It is a very nice restaurant, Daddy," Beatrice said. "You should wear something decent." I put on my only suit, the one I had buried Lavinia in. It was baggy. I had lost a lot of weight in 7 years, but it was the best I had. When I came down to the living room, Beatrice grimaced. "Daddy, that suit, it looks like a funeral." "It does," I replied dryly. "It is my funeral suit." Theodore chuckled. "At least it is black. You cannot tell how old it is in the dark." The restaurant turned out to be a swanky place overlooking the ocean. The maitre d' escorted us to a table by the window. I could feel the stares of the other diners' elegant couples in expensive clothes and felt even more acutely how ridiculous I looked in my baggy suit. Beatrice had ordered an aperitif for everyone. A fancy gin cocktail. "Daddy, you will like it." She said it is not strong. I wanted to argue that I did not drink gin, but I did not. When the menu arrived, I found that the prices were only on Theodore's menu. "Order me a steak." "Please," I asked my son-in-law. "Medium rare, steak." Beatrice shook her head. "Dad, you know you cannot have red meat," the doctor said. "What doctor?" I was beginning to lose my patience. I had not been to a doctor in 6 months, and no one had told me not to eat red meat. "Do not make a scene," Beatrice whispered, smiling at the waiter who was just coming to take my order. "He wants steamed fish fillets. No salt," she said. "And vegetables." I sat clenching my fists under the table. What is going on? Why are they doing this? When the food arrived, Theodore pulled out his phone. "I need to take a picture for the twins. They asked me to show them how we vacation." He raised the phone, pointing the camera at Beatrice and me. "Smile, Daddy," my daughter commanded. I tried to smile, but I felt like I was making a grimace. "How about another one?" Theodore suggested. "You look like—" He paused. But I knew what he meant. Like an old man who had been dragged to this dinner by force. "Excuse me," I said, getting up. "I have to go to the restroom." "In the bathroom?" I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, staring at my reflection. When did I get so old? When did my daughter start treating me like a burden? What had I done wrong? Returning to the table, I found Beatrice and Theodore chatting animatedly with a couple at a neighboring table. An elegant woman about Beatrice's age, and a man in an expensive suit. "Ah, Papa." Beatrice turned to me. "This is Elizabeth and Richard. They are also vacationing here. Nice to meet you." I nodded. "Owen came with us from Boise," Beatrice explained. "We decided he should not be alone at his age." "Oh, how kind of you," Elizabeth said. "My father is old, too, but he refuses to travel. He says you cannot replant old trees." "You are lucky your father is so easygoing," Richard said to Beatrice. "My father-in-law is a tyrant. He cannot get me out of his house. He is never satisfied." "Oh, our father has a temper, too." Beatrice looked at me meaningfully. "Right, Dad." I silently picked at the tasteless fish with my fork. "You know," Beatrice continued, "sometimes I feel more like a mother than a daughter. I have to make sure that he takes his medicine, that he eats right. Yesterday I caught him trying to pour himself a whiskey with his blood pressure." I froze. That was an outright lie. I have not had whiskey in years, preferring a glass of wine with dinner. And there is nothing wrong with my blood pressure. "Beatrice," I began, but she continued, ignoring me. "And last week, he almost started a fire in the kitchen. Forgot to turn off the stove. That is not true, I raised my voice. "I have not been in your house in months." Beatrice smiled indulgently. "You see, his memory is not what it used to be. You were at dinner last Friday night." "Dad." "No, I was not." I felt my hands shaking. "You know that very well." "Dad, do not start," she said with a steely tone in her voice. "I am sorry." She said to Elizabeth and Richard, "He can be difficult sometimes." "Oh, we understand." Elizabeth nodded sympathetically. "Old age is no fun." I stared at them all, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. They were talking about me like I was not here, or as if I were no longer a person, but an inanimate object, a burden to be taken care of. "Excuse me." I stood up abruptly from the table. "I need some air." I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. The ocean breeze hit my face, bringing with it the smell of salt and seaweed. I inhaled deeply, trying to calm myself down. What is going on? Why is Beatrice lying about my condition? Why are they making me look like an infirm old man out of his mind? And then it hit me. They want something. Something they can only get if I look incapacitated. Money, a house, guardianship. I stood on the boardwalk looking out at the dark water and suddenly felt very alone and vulnerable. What if they really are trying to declare me incapacitated? What if this trip is just part of their plan? "Dad." Beatrice's voice brought me out of my reverie. She was standing next to me, wrapped in a shawl. "Are you all right? Why are you lying about my health?" I asked her bluntly. "I am not lying." She put her hand on my shoulder. "It is just that you forget a lot of things. That is normal at your age. I was not at your house for dinner last week," I said firmly. "And I did not try to pour myself a whiskey. And nothing happened to the stove." Beatrice sighed. "Daddy, let us not make a scene. Elizabeth and Richard have invited us to dinner at their house tomorrow. It will be embarrassing if you keep acting like this." "I am not going out with you," I said. "In fact, I think I would better go home." "Do not be silly." She squeezed my shoulder tighter. "How will you get back? Take a cab to Boise." She laughed as if I had said something incredibly funny. "Let us go back. Theodore has already paid. There is a car waiting for us. I realized I had no choice. At least not now." I obediently followed my daughter to the exit of the promenade, where Theodore and his cab were waiting for us. I sat in silence in the car, staring out the window at the lights of the coastal town floating by. Beatrice and Theodore were talking quietly in the front seat. I could hear bits and pieces of phrases. "It is too soon. We should wait a couple more days. He is starting to suspect something." I felt a chill run down my spine. They were up to something. Something to do with me. And whatever it was, it did not bode well for me. Back at the cottage, I went up to my room, locked myself in, and lay on the bed without undressing. Sleep did not come. I lay staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what was going on. One thing I knew for sure was that I had to stay alert. Beatrice and Theodore were up to something, and I had to be ready. I woke up to the sound of the front door slamming. The sun was already high in the sky, and the clock on my bedside table read almost 10 in the morning. Strange. I usually woke up much earlier. It must have been the sleepless night and all the worries of the last few days. When I went downstairs, I found the living room empty. There was a note on the kitchen table written in Beatrice's neat handwriting. "Daddy Theodore and I went on a field trip to a neighboring town. We will be back late tonight. There are sandwiches in the refrigerator for lunch. Do not miss us. B." I opened the fridge. Indeed, there was a plate with 2 sandwiches wrapped in food wrap on the shelf. I was not hungry, so I just poured myself a glass of orange juice and went out onto the terrace. The day promised to be beautiful. Cloudless skies, a light breeze off the ocean, the cries of seagulls. In another situation, I would have enjoyed this morning, but now all my thoughts were occupied with Beatrice and Theodore's strange behavior. I decided to take a walk on the beach. Maybe the fresh air would help me make sense of the situation, or when I got back to my room, I changed into more appropriate clothes for the walk, grabbed my wallet, and left the house. The beach was only a 5-minute walk away. Despite the beautiful weather, there were not many people. A few families with kids, a couple of elderly people walking their dog, and a lone surfer surfing the waves. I found a vacant bench overlooking the ocean and sat down, exposing my face to the sunlight. As time passed, I sat there, lost in thought. Something was bothering me. Beatrice's note seemed too ordinary after last night's incident at the restaurant. Not a word of apology, not a hint of our conversation. It was as if nothing had happened. By noon, I was hungry and decided to go back to the cottage for sandwiches. As I got up from the bench, I discovered that my wallet had fallen out of my pocket. Luckily, it was lying nearby on the sand. I picked it up and machine-checked the contents. There was no credit card. I double-checked all the compartments, shook out the contents on the bench. The card was nowhere to be found. There was cash, though the same $1,000 I had thoughtfully brought with me. I was sure the card had been in my wallet when I left the house. So Beatrice or Theodore had taken it while I was asleep. I felt a wave of anger rising inside. Why did they need my credit card if they needed money? They could have just asked. I would never said no to Beatrice. Back at the cottage, the first thing I did was check my suitcase. All of my belongings were in place, but something in their arrangement said that someone had been rummaging through my things. The passport I had kept in the inside pocket of my suitcase was now under a stack of shirts. I sat down on the bed trying to gather my thoughts. What was going on? Why would Beatrice and Theodore want my credit card and passport? And then it hit me. They were going to leave me. Everything fell into place. The strange looks, the whispers, the sudden hospitality after years of neglect. They had brought me here to an unfamiliar city thousands of kilometers from home to leave me without funds or papers. I rushed to the window and looked out the driveway, hoping to see their car. Maybe they had not left yet. But the driveway was empty. I sank down onto the couch. Feeling panic overwhelmed me. What am I going to do? I am in an unfamiliar city with no transportation and limited cash. Beatrice and Theodore have my credit card and passport. My first thought was to go to the police. But what would I say that my daughter and son-in-law stole my credit card? That they abandoned me in a resort town? It sounded so ridiculous that I doubted anyone would believe me. Besides knowing Beatrice, she must have prepared some story about my incapacity and memory problems. I decided to act on my own. First, I had to find out where I was and how to get to the nearest airport or bus station. In the hallway, I found a tourist brochure with a map of Monterey. Judging by it, it was about 3 kilometers to the city center. There must be a tourist office there that could help me. I quickly packed the things I needed: documents, cash, a change of clothes into a small bag I found in the closet. The rest would have to be left behind. Locking the house, I decided to take the key with me. A petty revenge, but still, I set off. The drive to the city center took almost an hour. Despite the good weather, I was quickly tired. The effect of age and all the worries. At the tourist office, I was met by a friendly young woman. "What can I do for you?" she asked me with a smile. "I need to get to Boise, Idaho," I said. "What is the fastest way to do that?" She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Boise? That is pretty far. You would have to go to San Francisco, get on a plane to Denver, and then take another flight to Boise." "How do you get to San Francisco?" "There is a bus that runs 3 times a day. The next one is in 2 hours." I nodded. "How much is the ticket?" $35 one way. I mentally calculated with the bus, cab to the airport, airfare, food, and maybe a hotel. If I could not get a flight out the same day, most of my cash would be gone, but there was no choice. "Where can I buy a bus ticket?" "Right here." She pointed to the small window of the ticket office in the corner of the office. "But you will need an ID." My heart dropped. My passport, which was my primary identification, was still in Beatrice's possession. I rummaged through my wallet, my driver's license. I had forgotten all about it since I had stopped driving years ago when my eyesight began to fail. "I have a driver's license," I said, relieved to pull out a plastic card. "That is enough." The girl nodded. After buying a bus ticket, I went to a small cafe across from the bus station. I had almost 2 hours before departure, and I decided to use that time to gather my thoughts and make a plan of action. Sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, I allowed myself to truly realize what had happened for the first time in a while. My own daughter had abandoned me in a strange place thousands of kilometers from home. Taking my documents and credit card, my son-in-law, who had never made much of a secret of his disdain for me, must have been the mastermind behind this plan. But why? What did they want to accomplish by doing this? The only thing that came to mind was money. They wanted access to my savings. Maybe they were planning to declare me incompetent, but that would require medical reports, doctor's certificates, or they were counting on me not being able to come home, that I would stay here in a foreign city without resources or connections. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that their plan had not been well thought out. They did not take into account that I had any cash left. They did not take my driver's license. They had not considered that I could seek help from the local authorities or the bank to block the card. This told me that the decision to abandon me had been made spontaneously. Perhaps after last night's incident at the restaurant, I began to understand their logic. They had brought me here hoping for something. What? But my behavior last night had thrown their plans into disarray. So they decided to get rid of me. The bus to San Francisco was half empty. I sat by the window watching the coastal landscape change to rolling hills. The ride took about an hour, and the whole time I could not stop thinking about Beatrice. Where had I gone wrong in her upbringing? When had my little girl, whom Lavinia and I loved so much, turned into a calculating and heartless woman in San Francisco? I went straight to the airport. There I was, in for an unpleasant surprise. The next flight to Denver was not until the next day, and it cost a lot more than I had expected. almost $700. I had a little over $900 left after buying the bus ticket and lunch. I stood in front of the flight schedule board, feeling despair come over me in a wave. I could buy a ticket, but then I would have virtually no money left for food and transportation in Denver. What if the flight to Boise is just as expensive? Can I help you? A voice came from behind me. I turned around. Standing in front of me was an older woman in an airport employee's uniform. "Yeah, I am trying to get home." I said, "Boise, Idaho, but flights are very expensive and I am on a tight budget." She nodded sympathetically. "Yes, in the high season the prices bite, but there may be alternatives. Have you considered the bus option A bus to Idaho?" "Yeah, there is a San Francisco to Salt Lake City to Boise. Takes 3 days, but it is a lot cheaper than airfare." 3 days on a bus did not sound very appealing, but I had no choice. Where can I find out more information? She walked me to the bus company's information desk located right inside the airport building. Indeed, a ticket to Boise via Salt Lake City cost only $200. The bus was leaving in 4 hours. I bought the ticket feeling a huge sense of relief. At least now I had a concrete plan. I would get home, even if not as quickly as I would have liked. I spent the remaining time before departure in the small airport cafeteria, reflecting on my life and my relationship with my daughter. I remembered how Beatrice had been as a little girl, a smart, inquisitive girl with dimples in her cheeks when she smiled. How she would bring drawings for Daddy from school. How she would ask me to read to her before bedtime. How she would trustingly put her little hand in mine when we crossed the road. When did things change? In adolescence, in college, or later when she met Theodore? I remembered how she had brought him to meet us. Lavinia immediately disliked her future son-in-law, though she tried not to show it. There is something about him, insincere. She told me later. I brushed it off then, thinking it was just maternal jealousy. No one would be good enough for her girl. Now I realized Lavinia was right. There really was something fake about Theodore. He always seemed too kind, too attentive when it was to his advantage. At other times, he barely concealed his irritation and disdain. After the wedding, Beatrice became more and more like her husband. Her calls became shorter and less frequent. Her invitations to visit became more and more formal. When they had twins, Lavinia and I hoped it would bring us closer together. But the opposite happened. Beatrice and Theodore built a wall between us and the grandchildren. And then the request for money started. Small amounts at first for repairs, for vacations, for the children's school, then bigger ones. I never said no, partly because I wanted to help my daughter, partly out of guilt. I thought I had made a mistake somewhere in her upbringing, and now I was trying to make up for it with financial support. The largest was a $40,000 contribution to their new home. Beatrice had come to me with this request shortly after Lavinia's death. "We want to move to a better neighborhood with good schools for the kids," she explained. "But we do not have enough for a down payment." I agreed without hesitation. Lavinia had left a substantial insurance policy, and I wanted that money to benefit the family. Plus, Beatrice had promised that I would be put on the paperwork as a co-borrower just in case, so you would always have a place to come. I remembered the day we signed the papers in the lawyer's office. Beatrice was unusually affectionate. Theodore unusually friendly. I signed all the papers with barely a glance. I remember the lawyer asking if I was sure I wanted to be a co-borrower and not just give money as a gift. A co-borrower is liable on the mortgage, but also has rights to an interest in the property, he explained. I nodded, not really getting into it. What did it matter if the house would still belong to my daughter and grandchildren after I died, now sitting in an airport cafeteria thousands of miles from home? I wondered for the first time, what exactly did I sign then? What was my legal status with regard to their home? I vaguely remember the phrase joint ownership in the documents. Did that mean I officially owned part of the house? This question kept me awake all 3 days as I jolted on a bus across half the country. I barely slept, getting off at stops just to stretch my legs and buy food, and I kept thinking about those papers, about the house, about Beatrice and Theodore. By the time the bus finally arrived in Boise, I was exhausted physically, but my mind was working clearer than ever. I had a plan matured. It was about 15 kilometers from the bus station to my home in Boise. I spent the last of my money on a cab. The house greeted me with silence and the smell of dust. I had been gone for almost a week. The first thing I did was check the house phone. The answering machine had 17 messages from Beatrice. In the first few, she had asked if I was okay and why I had not been in touch. In the last few, her voice sounded worried, even scared. "Daddy, please call me as soon as you get this message. Theodore and I are very worried." I did not bother to call back. Instead, I showered, changed into clean clothes, and headed to the bank. I needed to block a credit card and find out if there had been any transactions on it in the last few days. At the bank, I was met by Eleanor, the manager, who had handled my accounts for years. "Mr. Harper," she exclaimed, "we were just trying to get in touch with you. Your daughter came by yesterday saying you lost your credit card while you were on vacation." "I did not lose it," I replied calmly. "Beatrice took it without my knowledge and left me alone in California with no means of support." Eleanor looked shocked, but she said that you instructed her to block the card. "That is a lie. I want to know if there have been any transactions on my card in the last week, and, if so, which ones?" She ran a quick check on my account. "Yes, there have been several transactions. 3 days ago, a cash withdrawal from an ATM in San Francisco. $4,000. And yesterday, an attempted transfer of $15,000 to Beatrice Harper's account, but it was declined because it exceeded the daily limit. I felt everything go cold inside. They had not just abandoned me. They were trying to empty my accounts. "I want to block the card and issue a new one," I said, "and renegotiate all access to my accounts. Beatrice should not have any access." "Of course, Mr. Harper." Eleanor nodded. "We will do everything immediately." When I had finished with the bank, I went to Martin Caldwell, the lawyer who had helped me with the paperwork after Lavinia's death. His office was in the center of Boise in an old brick building overlooking the city park. "Owen." Martin rose from his desk to shake my hand. "What are you doing here? You look tired." "Long story." I sank into the chair across from his desk. "Martin, do you remember 7 months ago when you drew up the deeds to Beatrice and Theodore's house where I was a co-borrower?" "Of course I remember." He nodded. "A big house in the Riverside neighborhood. I want to know what my legal status is with regard to that house. Do I own it? What are my rights?" Martin looked at me carefully. "Is something wrong?" "Yes." I told him briefly about the trip to California and how Beatrice and Theodore had abandoned me there. "I want to know what I can do." Martin shook his head. "A terrible story. Give me a minute. I will find the documents." He opened a file cabinet drawer, went through several folders, and pulled out one here. He flipped through a few pages. "According to this deed, you are part owner of the house along with Beatrice and Theodore. The 3 of you are equal owners. Equal shares." I was surprised. I thought I was just a co-borrower on the mortgage. "No." Martin shook his head. "You are a full owner of 1/3 of the house. What is more," he turned the page, "there is a clause that says that any decisions regarding the sale or transfer of ownership must be made unanimously by all 3 owners." I felt a strange warmth spill inside. Not gloating, no more like a sense of justice restored. "So," I said slowly, I can sell my share or even initiate the sale of the whole house? Yes. Martin nodded. You can sell your share to anyone you want. Or if you find a buyer for the whole house, you can initiate the sale process. Beatrice and Theodore could refuse to sell their shares. But then the case could go to court to force a division of the property. I leaned back in my chair, pondering this information. I own a third of their house. The house they never once invited me into after I gave them the money for the down payment. The house that houses the people who abandoned me in a foreign city thousands of miles away from home, taking my papers and trying to steal my money. Martin, I said after a pause, I want to sell my share. Immediately. Sell your share? Martin asked, looking at me carefully. To whom I wondered, really, who would want to buy a third of a house where other people live? What if I sold the whole house? I asked. You said I could initiate the sale. Martin chewed his lip, thinking. Technically, yes. As a co-owner, you have the right to initiate the sale, but Beatrice and Theodore might not agree, and then the matter would go to court. It is a long process. I have time, I replied. What is the first thing to do? Get a realtor to appraise the house, then write a formal notice to Beatrice and Theodore of your intention to sell the property. I can prepare all the necessary documents. I nodded. Is there a realtor you can recommend? Yeah, Veronica Page. She has been working with real estate in that area for years. She is very competent. He wrote the realtor's name and phone number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. Thank you. Martin, there is one more thing. I hesitated. Beatrice and Theodore keep their second car in my garage. Technically, it is theirs. But I paid part of the price and my name is on the paperwork. Can I sell it? Martin went back to the file cabinet. Let me remember. Oh, here, yeah. Is that the red SUV legally? You are a co-owner because your name is on the registration papers, but it is going to be hard to sell without their consent. What if we could find a loophole? I was not going to back down. Martin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. There is one option. If the car is on your property for more than 6 months without moving, you can file an abandoned property claim. But you have to prove that you tried to contact the owners. They have not returned my calls for many months. That was the truth. And the car has been sitting in my garage for over a year. In that case, there is a chance you have to file the proper paperwork with the DMV. If everything goes smoothly in 30 days, you could have the right to sell it. I nodded, mentally ticking off another item in my retaliation plan. One last question. Beatrice and I have a joint bank account. I opened it when she was in college to send her tuition money. We never closed it. Can I withdraw money from it? Martin frowned. If it is a joint account with equal access rights, then legally, yes. But I would recommend caution. If there is money in there that clearly belongs to Beatrice, I have been transferring $500 there every month for the last 7 years. I interrupted him. They never thanked me for it, just silently withdrew the money. I guess whatever is in there is mine. Martin shrugged his shoulders. In that case, you have every right to dispose of those funds. I thanked the lawyer and left his office with a clear plan of action. The first thing I did was to call Veronica Page. She agreed to meet with me the same day. Veronica was an energetic woman in her 50s with a keen eye and business acumen. She listened attentively to my story without surprise or judgment. There have been other cases in my practice, she said when I had finished. Well, let us take a look at the house. Do you have the keys? I shook my head. No, but I have the title deeds. That is enough to get us started. We can check the exterior and then I will contact your daughter and son-in-law to arrange an interior inspection. They are not back from their trip yet, are they? Not that I know of. We agreed to meet in an hour at Beatrice and Theodore's house. I went home, got all the necessary paperwork, and headed for the Riverside neighborhood. The house looked impressive. A 2-story house with a manicured lawn and a stone walkway leading to the front door. Veronica was already waiting for me, taking notes in her clipboard. "Great location," she said when she saw me. "The neighborhood is very sought after by families with children. The schools nearby are some of the best in the city." We walked the perimeter of the house. Veronica looked at the facade. The backyard with a pergola and barbecue and the two-car garage, I would estimate at about $600,000, she said, having finished the inspection. "But you would have to look inside to get a more accurate estimate. 600,000. I did the math. My share is about 200,000. That is not a bad sum." "What is next?" I asked. "I will prepare the documents to initiate the sale. You will have to sign them. Then we will formally notify the other owners. They will have 30 days to respond. If they agree to the sale, great. If they do not, we will have to go to court. I am open to either option," I said firmly. When I got home, I decided to tackle the next item in my plan, Theodore's car. A red late-model Ford Explorer SUV stood in my garage, covered in a thin layer of dust. Theodore had bought it 2 years ago, but for some reason he preferred to keep it at my place. Maybe he did not want the neighbors to see that they had 2 expensive cars. It might raise questions about their income. I found the registration papers for the car. Indeed, my name was listed second to Theodore's. I remembered how my son-in-law had asked me to sign the papers explaining that there were some tax benefits. I did not bother to look into it. I just signed as I always did when Beatrice or Theodore asked for something. The next day, I went to the DMV with an abandoned property claim. The process was surprisingly simple. I filled out the forms, provided proof that the car had been on my property for more than 6 months, and confirmed that I had attempted to contact the owners multiple times. I was told that a decision would be made within 30 days. Having done with that, I went to the bank. A joint account with Beatrice had been set up back in the days when she was in college. At the time, it seemed like a convenient way to send her money for tuition and living expenses. After graduation, I offered to close the account, but Beatrice insisted on keeping it just in case. This just in case came every month when I transferred money there, and Beatrice withdrew it without a word, without gratitude. I had long since stopped wondering what she was spending it on. Eleanor met me again at the bank. "Mr. Harper, that is twice in one day." She smiled. "What else can I do for you?" "I want to check the balance and transactions on the joint account with Beatrice," I said. Eleanor nodded and turned to the computer. "The current balance is $25,000, she said. "The last transaction was your transfer of $500 a week ago. $25,000. I was surprised. Usually, Beatrice withdrew the money almost immediately after my transfer. Apparently, she had not done so in recent months. Perhaps she had forgotten about the account or had another source of income. I want to close this account and transfer the money to my personal account," I said. Eleanor hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure, Mr. Harper? It is a joint account, and it usually requires the consent of all the owners to close it." "I opened this account. I have been depositing money into it all these years," I said firmly. "If there are any legal impediments, I am willing to sign any documents taking responsibility for it." Eleanor checked the account information again. Indeed. According to the transaction history, all the deposits were made from your side. In that case, you have the right to close the account. But I must warn you, your daughter can challenge this decision. Let her try. I answered, "I am ready to provide all the necessary proof that the money belongs to me." The process of closing the account took about an hour. I had to sign several documents confirming my decision and taking responsibility for any possible claims from Beatrice. In the end, $25,000 was transferred to my personal account. As I left the bank, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if I had broken another thread that bound me to my daughter and son-in-law. a thread that had long ago become a heavy chain. I spent the next 2 weeks actively looking for a new place to live. My home, though cozy, was full of memories of Lavinia, of Beatrice the child, of happy times that would never return. Besides, Beatrice knew the address, and I wanted to disappear from her life completely. I found a small but bright apartment in a new development on the other side of town. The neighborhood was quiet with lots of parks and a lake nearby. The rent was quite reasonable, $1,000 a month, including utilities. The owner of the apartment, a man about my age named Silas, was a pleasant conversationalist. He lived next door and rented out several apartments in the complex. You know, Mr. Harper. I do not usually rent to people who are older. He admitted during our first meeting, "Too many problems. Blood pressure. Heart problems. But you look strong. And you have honest eyes." I smiled. "Thank you for your kind words. I promise not to be a bother." We signed a 1-year lease with an option to renew. I paid the first and last month's rent and got the keys. The move only took 2 days. I decided to leave most of my furniture and belongings in the old house. They were part of my past life. I took only the essentials with me: clothes, a few books, pictures of Lavinia, a computer, and some kitchen utensils. Everything else I planned to buy again. New life, new things. Along with the move, I was in the process of changing my contact information. First, I changed my phone number, choosing an operator I had never used before. Then, I created a new email address. I had used the previous one for over 10 years, and it was known to Beatrice. I updated the information in all the important places: the bank, the insurance company, the medical offices. Everywhere I put a new address, a new phone number, new mail, nowhere leaving a trail that could lead back to me. The last step was to disconnect the home phone at the old house. Before doing so, I listened to all the messages from Beatrice. Over 30 of them had accumulated. Her voice was becoming increasingly anxious, even panicked. In the last messages, she threatened to go to the police if I did not get in touch. I was not moved by that. I just erased all the messages and called the phone company to disconnect the line. 3 weeks after I returned from California, 2 important events occurred. First, the DMV granted my abandoned property claim and issued me paperwork allowing me to sell Theodore's car. Second, Veronica Page reported that she had found a potential buyer for the house who was willing to pay $650,000. "That is a very good offer," she said, "especially since the buyer is willing to act quickly. But we still need Beatrice and Theodore's approval. Have they received the notice yet?" "Yes. I sent it by registered mail to the address of the house, but there is no reply yet." I nodded. Most likely, Beatrice and Theodore had not returned from their trip yet. Or they had. But they were too busy looking for me to pay attention to official letters. The next day, I went to the car dealership to sell Theodore's SUV. I chose a dealership in a neighboring town to minimize the chances of anyone recognizing the car. The used car repurchase manager, a young man named Brandon, took a close look at the SUV. "Excellent condition," he said. "Low mileage, only 15,000 miles. I can offer you 35,000. I knew Theodore had paid about 50,000 for the car 2 years ago, but 35,000 was a reasonable price for a used car. "It is a deal," I said. It took about 2 hours to finalize the deal. I provided all the necessary paperwork, including the DMV's decision to declare the car an abandoned property. Brandon wrote me a check for 35,000, which I immediately took to the bank. Back in my new apartment, I felt a strange satisfaction. The revenge plan was beginning to bear fruit. I had sold Theodore's car, emptied the joint account, and soon I might be selling their house. All the threads that bound me to my daughter and son-in-law were severed. A new address, a new phone number, new mail. I sat in a chair by the window overlooking the lake, sipping tea, and reflected on how my life had changed over the past month. The pain and resentment had not disappeared, but they had transformed into something else, into determination, into a desire for justice. The next day, I got a call from Veronica. "Mr. Harper, I have news. The buyer insists on closing the deal as soon as possible. He is willing to increase the offer to $700,000 if we close within a week. What about Beatrice and Theodore's consent? The notice period expires in 3 days. If they do not respond, we can take legal action to force a sale. Given the circumstances and the fact that you are a full co-owner, the chances of a favorable decision are very high." I wondered. Litigation meant additional costs and time. But on the other hand, the buyer was offering an excellent price. Let us go ahead with the plan. I decided, if Beatrice and Theodore do not respond by the deadline, we will start legal proceedings. "Great," Veronica said. "I will contact you as soon as I have news." 3 days later, Beatrice and Theodore still had not responded to the notice. Veronica initiated court proceedings to force the sale. "It is going to take some time," she warned. "But all things considered, I am pretty sure the court will be on our side." I nodded. I had time. But Beatrice and Theodore, when they finally returned and found their house for sale, would have much less time. Life in the new apartment was slowly getting better. I bought the furniture I needed, made the space my own. I got to know my neighbors, mostly elderly couples or single people my age. We sometimes met in the common courtyard, discussed the weather, shared news. None of them knew my story. To them, I was just Owen, a widower who had recently moved from another neighborhood. It gave a sense of freedom that I had not experienced in a long time. A week after the legal process was initiated, I got a call from Veronica. "Mr. Harper, I have some unexpected news. Beatrice and Theodore have come forward. They contacted me through their attorney. I am tense. What are they saying?" "They claim you are incapacitated and have no right to your share of the house." Their lawyer provided some medical documents supposedly confirming the early stages of dementia. I felt my anger boiling up inside of me. "That is a lie. I have not had any medical tests for dementia, and that is what I thought," Veronica said. "Do not worry. We can easily disprove these claims. You will have to undergo an independent medical examination to prove your competence. I am willing to undergo any tests," I said firmly. "Good. I will contact several specialists and arrange for the examination. In the meantime, the sale is on hold until the question of your legal capacity is resolved." After my conversation with Veronica, I sat looking out the window at the lake for a long time. So that was their plan. They wanted to declare me incompetent so they could gain control of my finances. Going to California was part of that plan. Perhaps they wanted to create a situation where I would look confused, unable to take care of myself. But their plan failed. Not only had I returned home on my own, but I had taken over the initiative. Now they were trying to get even by providing fake medical documents. Well, I will win that battle, too. And then I would take what was rightfully mine. My share of the house they never thought was mine. Even though I had invested not only money in it, but hopes for a family happiness that never came. It has been almost 2 months since I returned from California. An independent medical examination had fully confirmed my capacity. 3 different specialists, a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and a gerontologist, agreed that I was of sound mind and memory. Their opinions were submitted to the court, and Beatrice and Theodore's attempt to have me declared incompetent failed. Court proceedings to force the sale of the house were resumed. The buyer, fortunately, did not back out of the deal. Although he reduced the offer to $600,000 because of the delay, I agreed to that price. After all, it was not so much about money as principle. That morning, I sat in a cafe near the courthouse waiting for a call from Veronica. Today was supposed to be the final hearing in the forced sale case. I did not go to court. I did not want to meet Beatrice and Theodore. Veronica represented my interests. The phone rang at 11 sharp. "Mr. Harper," Veronica's voice sounded excited. "The court has ruled in our favor. The forced sale has been approved. The house will be sold for $600,000, and your share will be $200,000. I felt the tension I had been carrying around all these weeks begin to let go. "Thank you. Veronica, you did a great job." "Beatrice and Theodore are furious," she continued. "They screamed in the courtroom, threatened to appeal, but the judge was adamant. They have 30 days to vacate the house. And if they refuse, then the eviction proceedings will be initiated. But I do not think it will come to that. Their lawyer seems to be a reasonable man. He should explain to them that further resistance will only make things worse." I nodded, though Veronica could not see it through the phone. "When will the deal be closed?" "As soon as they vacate the house. The buyer is willing to act quickly. I think within a month to a month and a half. It will be finalized." "That is great. Thanks again for everything." I hung up the phone and took a sip of my already cold coffee. Strangely, I felt neither triumph nor gloating, just a quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. I paid and left the cafe. It was a clear, sunny day. I decided to walk to my apartment, enjoying the good weather and a sense of accomplishment. But fate had it differently. I had only gone a block when I heard a sharp squeal of brakes. A black SUV stopped right in front of me, blocking the road. The door swung open and Beatrice jumped out of the car. Behind her, a little slower, came Theodore. My daughter looked as if she had aged 10 years. Her eyes were red, her hair a mess, her clothes wrinkled. Theodore seemed more collected, but there was so much hatred in his gaze that I took an involuntary step back. "You," Beatrice literally spat the word out. "How could you?" I looked back. We were standing in the middle of a busy street, attracting the attention of passers-by. "I think we should find a better place to talk," I said calmly. "Talk," Beatrice was almost shouting. "You sold our house. You stole our car. You took our money. What kind of conversation can we have?" Theodore put his hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her down. Not here. People are watching." That cooled her fervor a little. She took a deep breath, trying to pull herself together. "Okay." Her voice was still shaking with rage. "Where do you want to go to your new home, the one you did not even tell us about?" I shook my head. "There is a cafe around the corner. It is quiet enough." Beatrice nodded, and we headed toward the cafe. Theodore followed behind, as if afraid I might run away. We found a table in the far corner away from the other customers. The waitress brought menus, but neither of us was interested in eating. I ordered only tea. Beatrice and Theodore declined everything. As soon as the waitress stepped away, Beatrice exploded again. "How could you do this to us? We are your family. We took care of you." I looked at my daughter calmly. "Cared you call that caring? You abandoned me in a strange city thousands of miles from home. Took my papers and my credit card. Tried to steal my money." "We did not abandon you," Beatrice exclaimed. "We went back to the cottage and you were not there. We looked all over town for you. We called every hospital, every police station. After you withdrew $4,000 from my card and tried to transfer 15 more to your account, I said." Beatrice blushed. "It was for your own safety. We saw you getting confused, forgetting things. We wanted to make sure you did not spend all the money on something stupid." I shook my head. "Do not lie. Beatrice, you have always been a bad liar. You tried to declare me incompetent so you could gain control of my finances. Going to California was part of that plan." Theodore, who had been silent up to that point, finally spoke up. "Even so, does that justify what you did?" You sold our house. Our house. Damn it. Where are we going to live now? It was my house. Two, I replied calmly. I paid the down payment. I was listed on the deed as an equal owner, but you never invited me in once after you bought it, because you were always busy, Beatrice blurted out, always making excuses. That is not true, and you know it. I called you every week. I offered to come over for dinner for the weekend. You always said no. Beatrice looked away. At that moment, my tea arrived. I took a sip, giving my daughter and son-in-law time to process my words. What now? Beatrice finally asked. Are you satisfied? Ruined our lives? I did not ruin your life, I replied. You will get 400,000 from the sale of the house, your 2/3. That is enough for a down payment on a new house. It is not about the money. Beatrice was starting to get agitated again. This is about you betraying us, your family. I looked her straight in the eye. No. Beatrice. It was you who betrayed me years ago, when you started treating me like an ATM machine instead of a father, when you stopped inviting me to visit, when you decided you could just take my money and get rid of me. Theodore snorted. Oh, come on. Owen, you have always been complicated, always dissatisfied with everything, always knowing better. I never lectured her. I countered. I just wanted to be a part of her life, to see her grandchildren grow up, to be there for her in the big moments. You have always been around money, Theodore said sarcastically. And only with money. I did not say anything. What was the use of explaining? They only saw what they wanted to see. Daddy. Beatrice's tone changed suddenly, her voice soft, almost pleading. Let us forget all this. Let us start over. You do not want to be alone, do you? Without your family, I smiled sadly. I am already alone. Beatrice, I have been alone for years, ever since your mother died, and you decided you did not need your old father anymore. That is not true. She was almost crying. I have always taken care of you. No. I shook my head. You took care of my money, and you do now. You are not worried about me being alone. You are afraid you will not be able to get a dime from me anymore. Beatrice jumped up, her face contorted with anger. You monster, a cold, heartless monster. No wonder Mama was always complaining about you. That you never understood her, never supported her. I froze. Lavinia complained about me. What are you talking about? She called me almost every day. Beatrice looked at me with triumphant gloating. Told me how indifferent you were, how you ignored her, how sorry she was that she had married you. I felt something inside me break. Lavinia, my Lavinia, with whom we lived 44 happy years. It cannot be. You are lying, I said quietly. Why do you think I stopped coming? Beatrice continued, I could not see the way you were treating her, as if she were just a furniture in the house. I closed my eyes, trying to collect my thoughts. This could not be true. Lavinia always said she was happy with me. We never had a serious fight, always found a compromise. She loved me, I knew it. And then I realized Beatrice was desperate to hurt me, to hit me where it hurt the most, my love for Lavinia. She knew that I carried that love through my life, that the memories of my wife were the most precious thing I had left. I opened my eyes and looked at my daughter calmly. That is enough. Beatrice, we both know it is a lie. Your mother loved me as I loved her. Our marriage was not perfect. No marriage is perfect. But we were happy together. You think so? She snorted. Because you never listened to her, never saw her suffer. I shook my head. I will not discuss it. I will not let you tarnish your mother's memory just to hurt me. Theodore, who had been watching the scene with a kind of grim satisfaction, finally intervened. All right, enough drama. Let us get back to business. You sold our house. What do you want in return? You want us to apologize. Okay. I am sorry we left you in California. It was stupid. We were not thinking. I looked at him in surprise. Did he really think a simple sorry was enough? I do not want anything from you. I said, no apology. No explanation. I just want you to leave me alone. Leave you alone, Beatrice interjected. You are our father. We are family. No. Beatrice, we have not been family for a long time. A family does not abandon each other in a strange town. A family does not steal money. A family does not try to have its members declared incompetent for profit. It was not for profit, she exclaimed. We wanted to protect you. From what I asked, from being able to control your own money, from the freedom to decide how to live your life, Beatrice could not find an answer. Theodore put his hand on her shoulder. Come on, Bea. It is no use. He will not listen. I finished my tea and put the cup on the table. Goodbye. Beatrice, Theodore, I hope you find a good home, and I hope we never see each other again. You cannot cut us out of your life so easily. Beatrice was indignant. We are your family. Harper and Riley are your grandchildren. Grandchildren? I have not seen in 2 years. I pointed out who do not even call on Christmas or birthdays. No, Beatrice. I have been out of your life for a long time. It is just that now I have made it official. I stood up, left the money for my tea, and headed for the exit. Beatrice jumped up, blocking my path. You are going to regret this, she hissed. When you die alone with no family around, you will regret it. I stepped around her and said calmly, No, Beatrice. I would be sorry if I kept clinging to the illusion of a family that did not really exist. Goodbye. I left the cafe without looking back. I walked down the street, breathing in the fresh air, feeling lighter with each step. It was as if I had dropped a heavy weight that I had been carrying for many years. When I got back to the apartment, I sat in a chair by the window, looking at the lake. The sun was setting, coloring the water with golden tones. It was peaceful on my soul, like I had not been in a long time. Sure, Beatrice's words about Lavinia had hurt me, but I knew it was a lie. My wife loved me as I loved her. We had our difficult moments, as in any long marriage, but we always overcame them together. Beatrice was just trying to hit a sore spot, and I would not let her do it. A month later, the house was officially sold. My share $200,000 went into my account. Together with the money from the sale of Theodore's car and the funds from the joint account, I had just over $275,000, more than enough to live comfortably at my age. I did not know what Beatrice and Theodore had done with their share. I did not know where they lived, what they did, and I did not want to know. That chapter of life was closed to me. Sometimes, of course, I thought about my grandchildren. Harper and Riley must be graduating from college by now. I had not seen them in so long that I would hardly recognize them when I met them. Sometimes I wondered if Beatrice and Theodore had told them what had happened, and if so, in what version they probably pictured me as a crazy old man who had sold their house out of spite or senile dementia. But that did not bother me. I knew the truth and lived in peace with that truth. My life in my new apartment was quiet, measured. I made a few acquaintances among the neighbors, elderly people just like me. We would sometimes get together to play cards or just talk. None of them knew my story, and I preferred to keep it that way. One day, about 6 months after the house was sold, I received a letter, a plain paper letter, no return address. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar. Inside was a postcard of the ocean, the same coastline in California where I had been with Beatrice and Theodore. On the back were just a few words. Thank you for the truth. Harper, I stared at that postcard for a long time, not knowing what to think. Harper, my granddaughter. How did she know where I lived? And what did she mean by the truth? Maybe Beatrice and Theodore had told the children what had happened after all. Or did Harper find out some other way? And why was she thanking me? I thought about writing back, but realized I did not know where to send the letter. There was no return address on the postcard. In the end, I just put the postcard in the desk drawer where I kept Lavinia's pictures and a few memorabilia. Maybe someday I would find out what Harper meant, or maybe I would not. It did not matter that much anymore. What matters is that I am finally at peace, free of the toxic relationships that had poisoned my life for years, no longer clinging to the illusion of a family that did not really exist. Sitting in a chair by the window, overlooking the lake, I thought about how strangely life works. Sometimes you have to lose something precious, your home, your family, your illusions, to gain something more important. Freedom, peace of mind, self-respect. I did not know what the future would bring. At my age, it did not promise to be long, but I knew I would live my remaining years at peace with myself. And that was enough.